Good evening, everyone. We, the TFO team, heartily welcome you all for today's section. The backbone of TFO is Dr. Geeta Vishwanath and Professor Nigila, as they led the foundation of Team TFO in June 2020 during the lockdown time. It has grown from a spontaneous ideal into a thriving community of film enthusiasts. Our weekly section, held every Saturday at 9 p.m. on Zoom, bring together scholars, students, teachers, and all cinema lovers to discuss films from around the world. Our format is so straightforward, like a member selects a film, we watch it individually, and then gather to share our insights. We have been privileged to host notable filmmakers, editors, and cinematographers like Abanna Sen, Amol Palekar, Girish Kasralli, and Adur Gopalakrishnan.
By those who you're trying
TFO's,
to influence or whose mind.
TFO's cinematic journey includes themed festivals showcasing East European, Iranian, and women's cinema. Annually, we celebrate our founding in June with a smartphone short film contest for students and university lectures. A highlight of our recent activities include our first offline event, an international seminar on Indian cinema in the digital era, held in collaboration with FCT Baroda last September. Today, we gathered here for discussing Ritwik Ghatak's film Jukti Takko Aar Gappo as part of our ongoing Ghatak Centenary Festival. Our discussion will be led by Dr. Sanghita Sen, who suggested this film. We are honored to have Dr. Sanghita Sen, Assistant Professor of Visual Communication and Digital Culture at Northumbria University, Newcastle, UK, where she teaches practice-based and theoretical modules on the film and television degree programs. She has a PhD in comparative literature from Jadavpur University, India, and a PhD in film studies from University of St. Andrews, UK. Her research interest includes anti-colonialism, Indian political cinema, transnational third cinema, Bengali cinema, Bollywood and other regional popular cinema, tricontinental film flow, and international solidarity network, and film curation or exhibition. She's also a practice-based researcher and a documentary filmmaker. She's currently working on a monograph documentary on the partition and Ritwik Ghatak. Some of her recent and forthcoming publications include Ghatak in the Shadows, film that struggled, Shadow Cinema, the historical and production context of unmade films, the documentarian Ritwik Ghatak, People's Artist, People's Cinema, and Mrinal Sen and Indian Third Cinema, the counteractive of the 1970s. She will share her insights and initiate a discussion on the film, exploring its themes and significance. We look forward to a thought-provoking conversation. Let me hand over the section to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Krishna Priya. Yeah, without much ado, I think I'm just going to get into Jukti Takko Aar Gappo, or in English we can call it reason, debate, and stories. So just with an anecdote, I'll start. Ghatak wanted to make a film to address several ongoing issues around 1970s, not just in India, but also across the world, like, Vietnam War and other kinds of, like issues, political issues, and also the ongoing debate amongst the Marxists and communists, in a transnational setup. Then he wanted to make a film, and obviously, I mean, he didn't pay much attention to the narrative structure. So you must have noticed that Jukti Takko Aar Gappo isn't very meaty with reference to a story. It's a very flat story that way, like the loss of home. It begins with loss of home, a breaking family, actually. So you can take it as a symbol of the partition. That's also breakdown, and people looking for refuge or shelter. And there are collateral damages, and then they meet all kinds of people on the way. It's a journey, basically. It's a road movie kind of thing, but road movie not in a generic sense. It's just not a road movie that way. You see, there are no car travels and that kind of thing. But it is that. I mean, I look at it that way. It's much like the journey and meeting of different kinds of people. People's path intersects. They talk about things that draw them together, and I think some uninhibited conversation takes place. Some are respectful, some are not so respectful, but conversation all the same, which is why reason and debate, which predominates the film, right? The diegesis of the film. Then there are some stories, like some they will talk about. There are story elements as well, like the boy Nochiketa feeling drawn towards this girl Bongobala, and we do see that that kind of chemistry between them. Ghatak uses sound in a very effective way to signal that, right? But obviously it's not a love story, so we don't see much of it also. But there are story potentials, if you like, right? So that was a little bit of the background of it. So a sequence in this film, Jukti Takko Aar Gappo. I will be most probably referring to this film because it's a long title. I'll be referring to the film as just Jukti. All right. I mean the film. Okay. So in this film, Jukti, Ghatak, in a sequence he depicts, you will all remember, there is a group of, Bengali intellectuals led by an eminent writer this character is played by Utpal Datta, drinking in a park in an evening. It's an, like evening time. One of their friends, that is Sotindra Bhattacharya, who you saw in Nagorik, Ramu in Nagorik, right? So he appears there just for that short scene and another scene also. Okay, so he arrives triumphantly with a bottle of Shivas Regal smuggled across the India-East Pakistan, now Bangladesh border. As conversations continue, Bhattacharya's character insists on avoiding any critical engagement with the ongoing Bangladesh Liberation War and the Naxal movement, and instead advises Datta's character to capitalize on the crisis by writing a novel or a play. So use it as a content, not don't engage with it. That's the idea. Highlighting the pervasiveness of the moral crisis, the sequence portrays its impact on visual arts. A painter member of the group contrasts the subservience of contemporary Bengali artists to the radical role of Spanish artists during Civil War, citing Picasso's Guernica. It's a very famous painting which was completed in 1937. As an example, that painter member cites Guernica as an example. However, the critical tone of the artist is diffused as another member points to the futility of engagement with socio-political crisis. In response, Bhattacharya's character brings up the dismal situation of Bengali cinema. He casually comments, I quote, "Isn't Bengali cinema becoming increasingly inadequate and restricted?" End quote. To this, the artist mockingly raises a toast, quote, "Hail our decadent and rotting Bengali culture," end quote. Such a depiction of, insouciance in people with social privilege sharply critiques the complicity. And also, if you have noticed, it was almost like it strangely reminded of Facebook Reels, 1 minute of content. So nobody was sticking to a point. So somebody is talking about transnational, issues, that anti-fascist response of artists, and then Bengali cinema, and then people are going back to Bangladesh Liberation War. So as if it is a whistle stop tour of, like ticking the boxes, right? And obviously Ghatak is critical about that. So this critiques the complicity with power that be and lack of commitment among contemporary intellectuals and artists who capitalize on spectacularizing people's suffering in cultural representations without any empathic engagement or solidarity, or really any accountability for that matter. This polemic tone predominates Jukti throughout. So you will see, there are several, like conversations or points where, this comment on intellectuals will be very prominent. Kumar Shahani, a noted Indian filmmaker, critic, and Ghatak student, categorizes Ghatak's works as, I quote, a violent assertion of Indian identity, end quote, which was, quote, identified with the objectification of effete feudal Brahminism and European humanism inflicted by the colonials, end quote. Indeed, the creative projects Ghatak was associated with, including plays, films, stories, were unfalteringly anti-colonial, anti-imperialist, and pro-people in spirit. As I mentioned in my comments last week, Ghatak chose the medium of cinema to agitate, educate, and organize people. To realize this goal, he politicized melodrama and adopted the Brechtian far from Dunge effect, which is alienation effect, to enable active engagement of the audiences with what is depicted in the film, drawing their attention to reality. Jukti opens with extra diegetic visuals, establishing at the very outset its symbolic, experimental, iconoclastic, and confrontational nature, which makes it a quintessentially political film. The film begins abruptly with a mid-long shot of a bare-bodied old man sitting by himself in a shack located in a deserted place. The shack occupies the central position in the mise-en-scène, with its uncovered back internally framing the vast ground behind. The figure of the old man at the center left of the internal frame appears encaged, as if that man is encaged in a cage, imprisoned somehow, as if he's watching a performance. To an Indian audience, the man in the shack might invoke the idea of Antarjali Jatra, moribund man left all by himself, waiting for death, or the iconic No Man's Land in Toba Tek Singh, a short story by noted South Asian author Saad Hasan Manto, Pakistani, South Asian, I said because initially he was Indian and then he had to move. He's also another great chronicler of the partition. So, like Ghatak was not just Indian. Ghatak is, represents South Asia in a big way. Similarly, Manto is also a similar figure like that. And also interestingly, Manto also died quite young, and Manto was also like critiqued, banned, all kinds of things happened to him. So, these two figures are quite uncompromising, and both had some kind of connection with, Bombay film industry as well. So yeah, there are quite a few moments like that. This figure has no narrative. This figure, I mean the old man figure, has no narrative causality in the film. Yet he appears thrice in it, with no change in his posture, almost like a still. You can't even see him blink in the film. Like, I guess if we look close enough, probably we will see him blink, but it's like he appears like a still almost. This figure temporalizes transcendental wisdom and despair in my reading, the Jungian sage archetype. And Ghatak had a lot of, like Ghatak was attracted to Jung very much. His mother archetypes are, that, and he read Jung extensively actually. So, his mother archetypes very much, like is a proof actually of his Jungian fascination. So it looks like a Jungian sage archetype rendered immobile and therefore powerless. In this film, I don't mean to say that Jungian sage archetype is powerless, but this character in the film, in the narrative, appears powerless. Just like just witnessing an onlooker. Yeah, Ghatak associated this figure, I feel, with the spirit of India, spectating the pandemonium and calamity inflicted on its people by moral degeneration, lack of accountability, and ethical bankruptcy. The next scene depicts a dance performance by three masked figures against an unspecified desert with a dead tree and barren white hillocks, as if they are performing in front of the archetypal sage. These figures also appear thrice. The old infirm man and three masked dancers in a surreal backdrop immediately sets a mood of ominous foreboding, thereby structuring the epic melodrama format of the film. Choreographed by veteran dancer Shambhu Bhattacharya, Ghatak's colleague at the IPTA, this sequence alludes to the opening scene of Macbeth and the congregation of the three witches in the middle of a battle. This extradiegetic sequence presages the overturned moral standards, the complete breakdown of ethical codes, unbridled state violence, and unavoidable doom in the context of 1970s Bengal on both sides of the border, where fair was foul and foul was fair. The socio-political topsy-turvy, which creates anonymity by dehumanizing individuals, justifies the nameless characters of his films who are disenfranchised and invisible. The figures of the masked dancers are pointed at the camera and, in effect, at everyone who is watching, as if the dancers are trying to remind the audiences about their indifference to civic duty, who forgot to act, what resulted in the mayhem. Instead of creating the comfort of familiarity, this film actively tries to create unpleasure by disrupting the narrative and achieve politicized engagement via alienation through such Brechtian sequences. There are a few other Brechtian sequences as well, like Ghatak pouring alcohol on camera a couple of times, or holding a glass to the audience saying, "Do you want one?" That kind of thing. So there are other Brechtian devices of breaking the fourth wall other than the one that I referred to also. Ghatak represents his own understanding of Indian history and the spirit of contemporary political discontent via a format of cultural dialogue based on reason, debates, and stories among the participants, which help him excavate the local and regional subjugated histories. Brecht's interest in intermedial connections between different performing arts including theater, folk cultural forms, and music, fascinated Ghatak. Much like the Threepenny Opera's successful use of intermedial juxtapositions from various cultural sources, Ghatak drew from cultural practices for his film from a number of resources, including Chhau, that is, a dance form which is practiced in Odisha, in Purulia, and a few in Jharkhand also. Baul and Sufi traditions, tribal music and dance, urban choreographed dance, Sanskrit scriptural references and folklore, and obviously epical tradition, along with other folk forms and people's theater to represent the undercurrents of cultural identitarian and class conflicts in his highly provocative Jukti Takko Aar Gappo. It's just for no reason that I feel it's Ghatak's swan song, In this connection, I would like to bring a reference to Ghatak's take on the ongoing Vietnam War when Jukti was being made. He wanted to make a film on Vietnam in 1968, which wasn't made, obviously. The structure and design of what Ghatak planned for his never-made film on Vietnam, which would have projected, and I quote Ghatak, the dreams of downtrodden as dreams, a phase that would have been conceived entirely in musical terms and to a certain extent choreographically with no traces of realism at all, end quote. He partially implemented this design in Jukti, as he found in the Nakshal movement, I quote, that ultimate extension of that protest, end quote, in Vietnam. In Jukti, he captured, I quote, the militancy of the masses, end quote, as he envisioned in the Vietnamese people's struggle against a formidable opponent. Though intermedial blending, through intermedial blending, Ghatak is able to, quote, capture the pulsations of the common masses that remain a mystery to the exploiters, end quote. Ghatak also used a typical Brechtian motif of characters breaking the fourth wall through direct camera address. I just referred to those incidents, and those of you who watch the film obviously can connect. Here, I would like to also to refer to a documentary that Ghatak made. It's a docudrama, you might say, little bit of mockumentary stuff. There was an intercommunal riot, machinated by the Hindutva forces in Jalgaon and Bhiwandi, in the 70s, I think 1970, 69, 70. Please check the date once. I'm just telling from my memory, and I'm horrible with dates. So what Ghatak did is Ghatak made a film called Ye Kyun. It's a documentary genre film, and then it's basically about two characters, and then some kind of like intercommunal riot happening, people dying, and that kind of thing. And at the end, the screen shows that let us not forget Bhiwandi and Jalgaon, and let this remain as a reminder of what happened there. So, you can imagine in 1970, I think this film was made in 71. So probably that was, just let me just check the date once. Just give me
It's
1970,
Sanghita.
Okay, so 1970, yeah. So which means that that the film was made in 70, I think. So this film is made almost immediately after that. So I claim Ghatak to be a documentarian. So these are the reasons why I think Ghatak is a documentarian. So something happens, and imagine he didn't have any money to make films around that time. He still made a film. And obviously he went against, and him being one of the persons in the receiving end of partition, obviously he understands that all these intercommunal riots are who are usually benefited from them, and obviously there are very deeper impacts, effects in over there, and he was clearly very, very opposed to the communalization of politics. So I think if Ghatak lived now, probably Ghatak would have made TikToks, because it reaches more people, and I can't even imagine Ghatak making TikTok videos, but probably he would have, because it is effective, it is alternative, or maybe YouTube, who knows. Okay, so where was I? Okay, so furthermore, Jukti displays an influence of documentary during the 1970s, a formal experimentation that Mrinal Sen championed. You know, Mrinal Sen's Calcutta trilogy, also a few of his other films, he uses documentary footage of things happening in the city effortlessly and wonderfully to create a counter archive of the period. We also have to remember several times before the emergency in Bengal there were president's rule a couple of times, so they were going through quite quite strict quite strict censorship around that time, and obviously other people were not able to express their views, and they used their social privilege in documenting those and weaving those texts into the body of their fiction films. So I think this is a great service to historical material and also counter archive. Okay, so Ghatak made two short documentaries in 1970, Amar Lenin, that is My Lenin, and Puruliar Chhau Nach, or the Chhau Dance of Purulia. He used footage from both these films in Jukti. The footage from the first film shows people's collective resistance against the feudal landlord, and the second footage depicts the tribal cultural practices of Chhau performance in Purulia. In these sequences, he interweaves documentary and fictional by placing fictional characters from the film's narrative along the documentary footage of the performance. So, for example, from Amar Lenin, the footage that he uses, that there is this, some thug from the landlord who comes with a gun, and Bijan Bhattacharya, the master character, is killed by a stray bullet. So just before that sequence, the sequence you see, that is from Amar Lenin. If you watch it, you will see it. And also the main narrator of Amar Lenin, you actually see him, Arun Mukhopadhyay, in this film. All right. So if you watch both the films, I assure you, you will find the footages that I'm referring to. Also, this film was banned. Amar Lenin was banned because of its political content. Amar Lenin was made to celebrate the centenary of Lenin. Okay, and also obviously it was about the, a lot of political content is there for obvious reasons. So it was not released, it was banned. And later on, USSR wanted to take this film, and then somebody initiated some conversation with the prime minister, and it was finally released. Not theatrically or not in India, but it was allowed to be taken to the USSR, okay, for screening. Okay, so referring to Brecht's theatrical techniques in his interviews and writings, Ghatak explicitly favored Brechtian aesthetics to seize the time and the course of contemporary history in the body of his cinema. He believed that filmmakers and their cinema must be involved in people's lives and their history. He said in one of his interviews, I'm saying it in Bangla and then I'll translate it. Shilpi hishebe ami involvemente bishwash kori. As an artist, I believe in involvement. So, a committed artist must remain actively associated with society, keep active contact with the masses, and be a part of their daily struggle. While this immersion in reality is crucial for the artist, creating alienation among the audiences with what is being projected in cinema is equally important for Ghatak. He deemed this alienation from what is projected on screen necessary to draw the audience's attention to the dismal situations of real life, to subsequently motivate them to be engaged with and resist it. He declared, I'm quoting, this is from an interview with Sunit Sengupta in 1967. He said, I quote, this is my translation, by shocking you every moment, I want to make you see that it is not an imaginary story. I didn't come here to provide you with cheap entertainment. I wish you to identify what you see as an imagined tale, but you must understand the thesis I put across through this is absolutely true. To draw your attention to this, I must create alienation. If you become involved in eradicating social barriers or corruption after watching the film, if I'm able to spread my own protest to you, I succeed as an artist. End quote. Acutely aware of the political responsibilities of an artist, he wanted cinema to reflect this commitment. He wanted a vibrant people's cinema movement alongside an already existing vibrant people's theatre movement led by the IPTA. This was to strengthen the leftist cultural front in India. This position and conviction that films should be used towards activist purposes and as a weapon was also shared by Mrinal Sen. Mrinal Sen and Ritwik Ghatak, they were very close friends. While engaging with Ghatak's films, it is vital to keep in mind his position as an artist and cultural activist, as opposed to someone who is interested in cinema simply as a form of art in its own right. That is, art for art's sake. In an interview in 1967, a time of deep crisis in his personal and professional life, which restricted his filmmaking for nearly 6 years, Ghatak still maintained this position as a cultural activist for whom any form of art is validated only if it is political. He was scathingly critical about contemporary filmmaker colleagues and other intellectuals in Bengal for remaining silent in time of severe political crisis and moral breakdown, viewing this as a mark of compromise and complicity. In contrast, he affirmed his refusal to ideological compromise, either for materialistic comfort or social recognition. And you do see this being expressed explicitly in Jukti. I wonder what Ghatak would have said today about complicit intellectuals as his adoptive country is going through a far-right ethno-nationalist onslaught, a moral and constitutional crisis, and in the transnational context, the most horrible and live-streamed genocide of the Palestinian peoples is being executed on Gaza by another ethno-nationalist state. I'm really curious to know what Ghatak would have said. Ghatak isn't here, but I think Ghatak's spirit is here to guide us, those of us who feel committed enough to Ghatak's idea of art, activism, cinema, etc. Finally, I would like to draw your attention to Ghatak's collaboration with people. Ghatak closely collaborated with ordinary people in Kolkata and Dhaka, and not just in Kolkata, in West Bengal, in different parts of West Bengal. And not just Dhaka, elsewhere as well. He went to Brahmanbaria to do his titash. So, there are other places also where he actively collaborated with people. So his collaboration came through before also in some parts of Jharkhand, then Bihar, when he was making Ajantrik. So in the 1970s, when he was making Puruliar Chounach and Titash, a river called Titash, Jukti and Amar Lenin, he acknowledged this collaboration as crucial for radical filmmaking. He lived in rural and semi-rural Bengal between 1970 and early 1972, and he pointed out that Jukti was fully informed by this experience. He recollected how he was looked after by very poor peasants in the village, where he was shooting and were severely ill, and also tribal people. He considered these acts as their collaboration in filmmaking. I quote, "That is the people's cooperation, without which nothing could ever have been made, end quote. Ghatak used villages in Birbhum, Purulia and Bankura districts and Kolkata as locations for Jukti. Actual villagers and city dwellers worked as characters and extras. He reflected on the tragic realization of his hostess who, unable to afford a light, just a simple, like oil lamp in their hut at night, said, and Ghatak quotes this, um, within quotes, the authorities have not yet been able to steal two things from us, God's air and the sun, but they will, end quote. Witnessing the suffering of the poorest of the poor and the oppressive role of the state responsible for their misery made him scathingly critical about filmmaking practices in Bengal. Obviously, he was also scathingly critical about the state. He used Jukti to vehemently attack the system for this exploitation and misery. I quote, this quotation is from, I don't know whether it was meant to be an essay or just a reflection or a part of an interview, but it was published in Chitra Bikhan 9, numbers 4 to 7, and most probably it was the last piece of writing by Ghatak, because this number came out between, this number was January to April 1976, and Ghatak passed away in February 1976. So probably it was the last piece of writing of Ghatak. So I quote, through this film, this is about Jukti that he is talking about. Through this film, I tried to protest. Whatever is happening should not happen. This is injustice. This is sinful. To protest is the first and foremost responsibility of an artist. Art is no flippant engagement. Those who are not protesting are doing something wrong. Art is a responsibility. I have no right to evade that responsibility, end quote. So collaborations between filmmakers and proletarian segments of the society in the process of filmmaking sets the emancipatory goal of Ghatak cinema, which is also something that was shared by the third cinema practice. Third cinema practice across the world is motivated by a sense of historical accountability to people. By foregrounding people's issues in the form and content, and by engaging peoples in the processes of filmmaking as mutually pursued cultural engagement, third cinema destabilizes the idea of aesthetic ownership of cinema from individual artists to the masses. This assumption of mutual stakes promotes the notion of active spectatorship in lieu of passive consumers of cinema as an entertainment product. The very process of including the marginalized people as active collaborators politicizes the filmmaking practice. This quest for an alternative radical cinema is comparable to the one that Robert Stam refers to in regard to third cinema and in search for an alternative aesthetics as a pursuit for, I quote, production methods and a style appropriate to the economic conditions and political circumstances of the third world. I'll now end my initial remarks with a quote on Ghatak by Safdar Hashmi, another, very political, very prominent theater activist from India. I quote, a lifetime of hounding and mental torture born out of uncertainties and intense privations at the hands of those who man the official bodies ostensibly promoting and patronizing new cinema drove this extremely sensitive individual, poet, scholar, and artist to a kind of self-imposed exile from the art world controlled by commercial monsters that broke him mentally and physically, end quote. This is from an article that Hashmi wrote called The Genius That Was Ritwik Ghatak. you can find this essay, which is collected in The Right to Perform, Selected Writings of Shavdar Hashmi. It was published from Delhi, Sahmat, 1989. I don't know whether it's in circulation still, but I think it is one of the essays we must read if we are trying to understand Ghatak as an artist. So that's me. Thank you very much. And as last week, I think a conversation will be wonderful.
Thank you, ma'am. Let the section is open for discussion. So please kindly turn off the mic and ask the questions or suggestions or discuss on this film.
Ma'am, I would like to ask something. When I was watching the film, I got to understand that the characters' names, they were full of mythological names and they had some relevance to the story, as Nilkantha, Durga, and everyone. Even Nochiketa is one of the mythological characters, but I couldn't understand why the name Nochiketa is being used for this character here. Can you put some light on that? You are mute.
Sorry. Yeah. So Ghatak was very fascinated by Indian mythology, but he used them. He politicized those, like the names also, like the references, I would say. Nochiketa was this, like man who went to the underworld and asked questions to Jomraj, Yama, and asked some very serious questions about life, very philosophical questions. And they are the contents of, I mean, you can read them in the Upanishads, right? So I think it is this thirst for knowledge. I mean, he didn't care that he's going to underworld, that it is possible that he will never be able to come back, but he didn't care. It's like the pursuit of knowledge was important. So I think that in mythological references, I think these people had certain agency and power. But in this film, you see, this is a very qualified engineer. Actually, this character is a qualified engineer, and yet doesn't get any job because the employment situation in the 1970s was terrible. I mean, when I was watching this film for this conversation, I was thinking, oh my goodness, this film appears like this film was made this year, and everything that was being shown there is so contemporary still. Like, there was a genocide going on in 70s, in Bangladesh. People were being killed, like disappeared, and all kinds of things were happening. People were disappearing in Bengal, as a result of, like state, crackdown and everything, right? So around that time, here is a character with a name that has great agency, wisdom, and also power, knowledge, because this person had knowledge. The person, obviously, a Brahmin and all those things. And here is a character who doesn't have any agency, it's really helpless, and lives a nomadic life, basically, follows this person. We don't know whether this person has a family. We don't know who is the family of this person. And other than following Nilkantha Bagchi, doesn't do anything. And Nilkantha, the name of Nilkantha is Lord Shiva. So, like drunk, poison. And, Ghatak did, I think to some extent, did see himself as a figure, who had to take on the poison of the world. And another interesting fact, Ghatak's surname, the second name, Ghatak, is actually a title that Ghatak's family received. Their original surname is Bagchi, the surname that the character of this film has, Nilkantha Bagchi. So Ghatak actually takes that surname. It's like people, for right reason, believe. I I'm one of them also. It's deeply autobiographical. But I think, you know, the testimonial nature of this film is also because, you know, it's there is this partition reference, you know, all kinds of references, and several of Ghatak's films are, you know, have autobiographical references. So because, you know, Ghatak documented so painstakingly the event of partition, not just partition, but also these days, you know, we call it the long partition, because partition isn't an event, you know, which ended after some time. It didn't. You know, today, if you see NRC, CAA, all these things happening, and the plights of Indian Muslims. And, you know, recently I just saw that, you know, somebody from Assam said that, you know, in the census, they're thinking of doing the census, and in the census, the, you know, when they get the data, how many people read and write Bengali, they will come to a conclusion that, you know, how many foreigners are here. And we have been seeing for quite a few, you know, years that, you know, I mean, Bengalis, a person who speaks Bengali or reads and writes Bengali doesn't necessarily mean that they are Bangladesh citizens. You know, we have Indian Bengalis, and people, extremely ignorant and toxic people who want to deprive people of their, you know, history, identity, and basically oblivious of the partition, will only say that. You know, you can see Bengalis in Tripura, you can see, you know, there are Bengalis in Assam, there are Bengalis in Shillong, there are Bengalis in all Indian states, because, you know, as a result of migration, people spread. Migration doesn't happen, you know, not I mean, each person left their homeland, didn't come to only one place. But, you know, I mean, this was just an example to say that, you know, it's ludicrous, but, you know, this is one politics that is being played again and again and again. And coming back to Ghatak, I think, you know, several testimonial aspect of Ghatak's films and autobiographical connections is because, you know, Ghatak wanted to use himself as a case study. I think that is why. Coming back to your question, your question about mythological names. So Nachiketa is one of the names, I think, is only, you know, just ironical. Like, you know, this person doesn't have any agency. You don't know their origin and where they're going to go. So that's one thing. Then Nilkantha, another mythological reference, right? Then Bongobala is interesting, because Bongobala is it's literal actually. Bongo, Bengal, Bala, daughter. So daughter of Bengal. And then, you know, initially when Bongobala's character comes on the screen, says that, are you the spirit of Bengal? And then you hear this, okay? I'll tell another story about, you know, this connection. Ghatak did have access to what was happening in, you know, during Bangladesh Liberation War in Bangladesh, not indirectly through his family, because Ghatak's twin sister Pratiti Devi was married to a very noted, very well-known, you know, Bengali politician called Dhirendranath Dotto. So Dhirendranath Dotto was that, you know, was a minister in East Pakistan, you know, like government. And then he was the first person to oppose, you know, oppose the policy of Urdu being the national language of Pakistan, and that was being imposed on Bengal. So Dhirendranath Dotto in the parliament, Pakistani parliament, actually proposed Bengali to be another language, another national language, because, you know, half part of the country spoke Bengali. And this is very similar to the, you know, like Hindi aggression on other Indian languages. You know, many people will, you know, relate to that. Like, you know, Hindi being referred to as national language. I mean, India has 23, 24, like multiple national languages. They are all constitutional languages. They are equally important. India doesn't have one official language, but oftentimes we come across that like this aggression comes into force, and like East Bengal resisted it, and Bangladesh is one country that got its independence not on the issue of religion, not on the issue of anything, but on the issue of language. So I mean, Ghatak's family, so Dhiren Datta was picked up by Pakistani army along with his youngest son, and his elder son Sanjeev Datta, who is the husband of Ghatak's twin sister Pratiti Devi, and their young daughter, Aroma Datta. These two people somehow escaped their home, and through Tripura they finally came to Kolkata to take refuge. So what you hear Bongobala saying that suddenly they came and nobody came to help, nobody came to our rescue. These are the things that these are testimonial, because Ghatak did hear these stories, and people, and obviously 1 crore of Bengalis took shelter in West Bengal during the liberation movement. Even might be more, but more or less this is the number that goes around. So you see, these are the kinds of things that you hear. Okay, then Durga. Nilkantha is Shiva. Obviously, Nilkantha's wife needs to be Durga. So Durga. Notice, Durga is never supposed to be a widow according to mythology. But here, Durga becomes a widow. See how Ghatak, turns mythology on its head, right? And then their child's name is Shotto, right? Truth. But also this has a reference to Ghatak's own son, which is Ritoban. Rit means truth. Rit, a Sanskrit word, this means the truth. So Ritoban, one who is committed to the truth. And the son's name in this film is Shotto. And the irony of it is, the truth becomes orphaned. So you see how Ghatak used mythology and, like basically politicized it so well. Yeah, I hope I answered your question at least to some extent. Yeah.
Definitely, ma'am.
I think I want to go ahead with a question.
Yes, please.
Can you talk more about the title of the movie, like reason, debate, and a story? Like, for example, in Tagore's work, if we talk about the home and the world, we see that its relevance to the story is there. Like, the home is talking about the place, and the world is talking about the whole. A whole of the crux he is exactly telling about. But in this, I want to know more about what it relates to exactly if we talk about the title in English.
Actually, Ghatak's this particular work isn't much to doesn't have. I think I might be wrong. Somebody might find a connection. I didn't find any connection between Tagore's Home and the World, Ghare Baire, and this. Ghare Baire is basically, if you have read Ghatak's, Tagore's essay on nationalism, Ghatak was not an why am I saying Ghatak again and again? Okay, so Rabindranath Thakur, let me call him Thakur, then I'll remember. Okay, Rabindranath Thakur was not a massive nationalist. He was an internationalist. And he actually did identify the problem of nationalism. That is, nationalism could turn parochial anytime, because, nationalism is founded on the idea of supremacy of somebody, like as an Indian nation we mean this and that. First of all, India is a combination of many nations. India is not one nation, because most of us identify. I'm a Bengali, somebody is a Malayali, somebody is a Telugu, somebody is a Tamil person. So it's more like that. But ours is a unity in diversity. We do share things which are common. We also have things which are very dissimilar, right? So in Home and the World, I think the debate between Rabindranath Tagore and Mahatma Gandhi is explained through narrative, like the character of Nikhilesh and the character of Shandip. Okay, so Nikhilesh is more like Rabindranath Tagore and Rabindranath Tagore's position, right? And Shandip is more like Gandhi's position on nationalism.
Yeah.
Yeah. But please do not, when I'm talking about Ghore Baire, please try to connect it with the novel, not the film. Remember, film and adaptation is an interpretation of the filmmaker. And I don't think that Ghore Baire does a lot of justice to the novel. So I think, one needs to read the novel if we are thinking in terms of these two massive stalwarts that India produced, Rabindranath Tagore and Mahatma Gandhi. And I think it is a moment of history when we need to really pay attention to Gandhi a lot, particularly because our, tenet of secularism, multiculturalism is under attack. And I think it is important that we get back to these figures who imagined India as a nation with more care and more accountability and more. I mean, please, if you feel free to oppose, but that opposition should be founded on solid reasoning, not because I don't like because this man was bald, or this man didn't wear some upper body clothes. Not that, right? I think that is one of the things, and which is why I feel Home and the World as a creative piece doesn't have much with much common with Jukti Takko Aar Gappo. But remember, because Ghatak was a committed Marxist and a communist, Ghatak was obviously drawn to Rabindranath Tagore. I mean, most people were actually around that time. So, but his appeal, I mean, the Tagorean internationalism had more appeal to Ghatak. But obviously, Rabindranath Tagore was no communist. But Rabindranath Tagore was internationalist. But Ghatak was an internationalist. First of all, he did see the point of internationalism, and also because he was a Marxist, I think opposition to border, and also a recipient of the partition atrocities, opposition to borders came naturally to him. And obviously, such a person, it is very hard for a person like that to be a fervent nationalist. I mean, I can't be a nationalist. I'm not a nationalist. I was never a nationalist. So yeah, I mean, if you ask me, do I like my country? I do. I do like my country. I do love my country. But country for me is people. Like I love people, like the music, the food, cinema, fabric. I'm obsessed with handloom. So those things, these are people. I mean, country is people for me. Country is not a drawn, it's not a political space for me. I mean, if you like, just go somewhere and live. How does it matter, right? So this is what is my take. And Ghatak is trying to make connection with international, issues, because he, in that forest, you hear a lot about, what is happening around the world. That is because he doesn't see the Indian revolutionary outbursts or movements as isolated Indian events. It is part of a historical moment. So for him, it's almost like, it's very geopolitical, to be honest.
I get it. I get it.
No
Thank you.
problem. Yeah.
Now, can I go ahead with a question?
Yeah, yeah. Call me Sanghita. Don't have to call me ma'am. Yeah.
Thank you so much again for joining the discussion with us today. My question will be concerning something that I came to observe whilst watching the movie. So the movie, again, like Nagarik, captured my interest despite its black and white composure. So I'm kind of surprised that I'm so drawn into this black and white landscape. So this happened, and I was indeed drawn into the idea of separation, which was later heightened, which later caught height into the picture of migration happening in between the present day West Bengal and the present day Bangladesh. So besides all of this, what I also came to take a note of was the dance that was there. We see Bongo Bala taking up the mask and learning to dance and becoming like a devi. So that's one kind of dance, and the other dance, which appears in the very inception of the movie with the 3 or 4 black bodies dancing, and we see them nearly at the end of the film as well. So, ma'am, can you elucidate on the dance as a motif that runs throughout the movie?
So, as I said in my presentation, so that's the dance with mask. You see, this is a form of dance, folk dance, but folk classical dance. Okay, so that's called Chau. Okay, so these are tribal people of Odisha, tribal people of Jharkhand, tribal people in Purulia. They themselves make those like masks. Okay, so and obviously these are the stories from the epic, sometimes from epic or from Puranas. So obviously the dance you saw in what Bongobala wanted to say, mui nachum, I want to dance. And then that Ganesh Mukherjee, that character, the master, who actually used to be a dancer, show dancer, but who doesn't dance, obviously he's old. He's saying, no, you can't. Women cannot do this dance. Actually, they don't. It's like men only do that dance. Chow dance is performed exclusively by men, right? So, see, this is also another thing Ghatak does. Like, a woman is saying, no, I will dance. And then that character comes out of that restriction. It's like these are all restrictions. Like, certain dance forms cannot be practiced by, men, or, there are some dance forms which are practiced exclusively by women. So, that kind of prejudice, or if you like, restriction, he is, I think, critiquing that. He's saying that, like the Bongowala character says, I'm going to dance, and a kind of, this person who was very reluctant before, that woman shouldn't be dancing, then goddess will be very angry. And then he's the one, he says that mother, dance. Unless you guys start dancing, we will be left behind, or to something to that effect, right? So that dance, as soon as that dance, it's a dance of destruction and dance of creation, almost, that kind of reference, right? That women, we have kept women out of this cultural practice for long enough. But I think, it's time that, it's maybe time to break the barrier and let people in. That kind of, reference could come in. Also, like, I think showing urban choreographed dance, like the masked dance, and that was performed by a very famous troupe led by Shambhu Bhattacharya. So that's a very urban kind of experimental dances. Obviously that was also they were part of IPTA. So I think one is folk, another is urban. So like it's folk versus urban, and basically there is no versus basically. They're just other parts, like it's like a jigsaw puzzle. At the end of the day, all of them are political, cultural practices associated with people's identities. So I think Ghatak used it in two different effects. By the way, Ghatak acted in Macbeth and as one of the witches in one of the theatrical productions. So Ghatak actually acted as a witch. So I don't know whether Ghatak, I mean, I didn't see any reference whether Ghatak had this, three witches kind of image in his mind when he actually created these characters. But because, Ghatak was a student of English literature. Ghatak studied English literature. He was a student of English honors in Krishnanath College in Baharampur. And then he didn't do his masters. He got admission, but he wanted to join the party as a full-timer, so he didn't complete his masters. But he received first class. So he was a very good student of English literature, and he quotes from Yeats. In Meghidaka Tara, you'll see he's quoting W.B. Yeats. Here also he quotes W.B. Yeats, at Galway Races, that poem. He again, and all these quotations are also not random, because at Galway Races is a poem about nostalgia, decadence, as if the past is going, that kind of reference is there. And Ghatak is talking about that, he as if time is fleeting in front of his eyes. Yeah, that.
Thank you.
Can
Thank you
I-
so much, ma'am, for elaborating on that. Anyone else who wants to go ahead may go on.
Ananya, can I come in?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much, Sangeeta, for that really wonderful presentation. I enjoyed it so much.
Thank you.
I just wanted to bring up this question of melodrama.
Mhm.
Now, we all know that Ghatak was, an unabashed user of the melodramatic
Yeah.
mode.
Yeah.
But in this particular film, it's not really, considered as melodrama the way we consider his other films like Megidaka Tara and Shubharna Rekha and all of that, because it does not conform to some of the structural conventions of
Yeah.
melodrama, especially in in the portrayal of moral extremities.
Yeah.
And for instance, Ghatak's character itself, he's both a victim of his historical circumstances,
Hmm.
as well as a fairly active agent of his own, self-destruction and decay and all of that.
Yeah.
So there are no, polarities in the characterizations the way one would expect in a melodrama. So here I thought, he uses melodrama, but at the same time, he's kind of, infusing it with this Brechtian alienation techniques, which you have, of course, spoken so eloquently about. And but at the same time, he's using all of that for something that is very deeply personal and autobiographical. So I thought his handling of the genre of melodrama was quite interesting in this film.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I see. This is what is my like take on this. In nothing is incidental in Ghatak. Nothing is incidental in Ghatak, and Ghatak was very well aware of, because he was a very self-aware man. Very very self-aware man. See how many times in this film he says, I'm an alcoholic." How many times he says?
Yes.
And then when he says, when Durga says, "Do you want me to leave anything?" And then he says, "No, I'm an alcoholic. I don't need anything, nothing." And he says nothing twice. Nothing. I'm an alcoholic. I'll somehow manage. So the only thing that he needs is alcohol. So I think Ghatak very consciously uses melodrama sparingly. So there are moments of melodrama, because I think also this film is too fractured to be melodrama, and it's too episodic, isn't it? Like
Yes.
suddenly there is documentary footage. Suddenly, although where that in that documentary footage where Jogen Master, sorry, not what is that master's name, that Bijan Bhattacharya character, Master, but he has a name. Oh my God. So I'm completely forgetting. So that when Bijan Bhattacharya dies, that whole moment is very melodramatic.
Yes.
And also Ghatak's own death, like it's like, see, all these characters very crucial, like very important characters, like that Bijan Bhattacharya character dying by stray bullet. So they are collateral damages of a war. And Ghatak uses Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Remember the last sequence when Ghatak dies, and also when in the beginning when Durga is getting ready to leave. So when Durga enters, see that unmistakable reference to Second World War, because that Morse code translates, Morse translated into Morse code, it is V, and that's how the V sign came into existence. It's that the Allied forces used it as to transfer it. So it's a fascinating kind of connection between Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, and this is also warlike situation. And it's like in Allied force, obviously like Allied force won in Second World War, and that's anti-fascism. Ghatak started his political activism through anti-fascist rallies, and he uses these, and very subtly. It took me a while actually to pick up that. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I watched Jukti Takko Aar Gappo. So it's amazing, really. And his death is very, the moment of his death, and then imagine suddenly a police officer, who is police officer, military, whatever, like leading an ambush, is suddenly saying quiet, like giving a lot of respect. I mean, I know how respectful police is when they kill people, but here suddenly, so he does use melodrama, but he politicizes it. So there are moments of melodrama, I feel. Or in the sequence, in the initial sequence, when Ghatak tells Durga, "You have been a good wife to me. You have been a good mother to our son, to my son." And immediately after that, you would imagine he would be quiet. No, he says, "Durga, just leave. Durga, shoo. Durga, off." So, it's like in close juxtaposition, you see sudden emotional outbursts to the melodramatic effect, I would say. Also, when Bongovala comes and then Nochiketa asks, who is this? Who is she? Then he says that it's like this is another bird whose nest has been broken in search of refuge, right? So you see the way he expresses things. Also, out of the blue, in that bench, when he invites Bongovala to take some rest, he starts reciting, that poem, at Galway races, and it resonates with the tone of the film. That appeared very melodramatic to me. Like, it's like just to express, the heightened emotional impact. That's what I think.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you.
No worries.
Nikhila ma'am, is there?
Hi, Nikhila.
Hi. Thank you very much for a wonderful reading of the film, but also for giving us so much information regarding the various kinds of writings available by Ghatak himself, whatever is available in Bengali, because that is not easily accessible.
My
to us.
book will be out hopefully by next week or next year. Sorry, next year. I'm still working on my monograph. Hopefully that will give some translation. I have been translating Ghatak's interviews. So hopefully someday, somewhere, I'm going to actually publish it.
So I was thinking of the number of things that the film does. As you said, to begin with, it's his take on art, or at least he's looking at different positions on art, for instance. Also, his response to his contemporary political situation that is going on. But there is also a kind of deconstructive edge to this whole thing, because it's all coming from a man who is a drunkard. So, so how seriously does one, not so much seriously, but, how does one engage with a character, who is otherwise, who does not seem to be purposive. We don't see him leading a movement. So in a way, he is also an intellectual who does not allow us to take him seriously. Let me put it that way. So it in a way it comes out probably as a kind of a film that is a response, of course, but also one which is a very different tone. I don't know how to characterize it, but one whose tone is not serious or pedantic. He's not telling you this is what it is. So there's a pathos certainly around the character, but there is also the failings of the man are so clearly evident. The failings of the character, I mean, are so clearly evident in the film. So it's a film that kind of unsettled me. And when Muskan was asking this question about the home and the world, as you said, it is also about partition on the domestic sphere, but also in terms of the larger partition that is taking place. But it's also about the challenges that confront this man. on the domestic front as well, his wife doesn't want him, so he does not have a home, and that's why he kind of dies in the forest, gets caught in the crossfire. So I was wondering, how would you characterize a film like this? So, I mean, I'm also asking this in the backdrop of what you spoke last time and also this time about his committed political ideology. So this is a committed political ideology which is in debate, which is how I understand that the title of the film, which is in debate. It's not as if it is settled one way or the other. And also about the young people and the uncertainty around them. He dies, of course, but what about the young, the young people who are there? So, I mean, it's a film I feel that is so open in so many different ways. So committed to a political ideology, but not kind of directing you and saying this is good or this is how it is, but very, very, setting up debates among different positions. Because the Utpal Dutt character, whom we see very briefly, one may think of it as a kind of comment, but it could also be a position, that another
Yes, of course.
artist.
It's totally a
Yeah,
position. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. Actually,
yeah.
the Utpal Dutt character is a reference to Somoresh Bose. You remember he is talking about, oh, that's a novelist who wrote, about what he said, worms and like worms and bugs. Yeah. So that's a reference to a novel called Prajapati, right? Butterfly. Okay. Which was charged of obscenity. Okay. And also Somoresh Bose was also a leftist. They knew each other. I mean, he was also talking about, I think he was, see, I don't know why Ghatak brought in that character, but I think obviously that's a position. And Ghatak, I think more than the Utpal Datta character, he was trying to bring the sycophants around him. So you see, there will be a big luminary in every circuit, and then there will be sycophants surrounding them, right? And those are the people who will claim to be, intellectuals, but no accountability. Okay, so I think by showing that character, but also that character, I think, the character of Nilkantha Bagchi has a respectful relationship with that character. Because you see that they had a relationship. Also, this film extensively quotes Ghatak's creative career. So they are referring to the the play that that Nilkantha Bagchi wrote in 40s. That's the play which actually Dolil, the document, that play was about, that is the film which you actually see being played in Komal Gandhar. Okay, so that is a film which received the IPTA award of best theatrical production in 1952, I think. Okay, in Bombay. So he's saying that, from 1940s, whatever you have been saying, you have consistently spoken about the same thing, that the cultural unity of two Bengals. See, I think Ghatak was not an idiot not to understand the political decision cannot be reversed. Obviously, Ghatak didn't see the breaking of Berlin Wall and East Germany and West Germany being united into one Germany. Ghatak didn't see. But I don't think that, Bangladesh and Bengal can be united ever, because, this is South Asia is different, and obviously it is not possible. And I don't think Bengalis aspire to see it that way, not from either side of the border. But at the same time, there is a cultural unity. amongst us because we are one people, on either side of the border. So there is a cultural unity, and Ghatak has been talking about that. It's almost like, a breaking of, you spoke about nuclear family the other day, and I think, that's quite relevant actually. It's just like the joint family has broken down, so we are now cousins, living in two different households, but we are still cousins. So there is a connection between us, right? So I think that is one of the things that, Ghatak brings in different characters that referenced different phases of his life and also positionalities, I think. And one thing I don't agree with you completely, that is, you said that, how reliable is that? I mean, imagine an artist laying bare his life like the way he did in a film. I cannot think of it as the work of a person in an inebriated state. That is impossible. I think this is height of his, creativity and intellectual experimentation. And also imagine, we very carefully protect our own vulnerabilities. It is very difficult to, tell you or anyone that, this is my vulnerability. And this man, I mean, everybody talking about Ghatak, they will definitely talk about Ghatak's alcoholism, but you will hardly ever hear people talk about his mental health issues. And the character of Durga is actually talking about, I even sent you to a mental asylum, which is true. He was sent to Gobra Medical Hospital, mental hospital. And you know what he did there? With inmates, he wrote plays and he made his inmates perform. So a patient under treatment, he is, what I'm trying to say is, a patient is not a patient for 24 hours. A patient also has moment of creativity. And it's like, I have long-standing mental health issues. That doesn't, or I'm neurodivergent, so it doesn't stop me from being who I am. That's my normal, I guess. You see, whatever I do, that's my normal, you see. So there is no normal as such. So basically, when we try to look at a person like Ghatak's capacity or, like creative practices from the lens of normalcy, which is top down, I think that creates an issue. And also Ghatak believed in dialectical materialism. So for Ghatak, this is actually a conversation. The different talking points are provided, and Ghatak doesn't care if you are critiquing him. You see, usually, in Indian culture, elders enjoy some kind of privilege. Like, how dare you talk to me like that? I'm elder to you. BS. How does it matter? I'm 15 years elder to you, but if I'm BSing, you should call me out, I think. But I think Ghatak creates that space for younger people. And if you hear a lot of urban myth about Ghatak, one of the myths is Ghatak used to be very friendly with underdogs. Ghatak used to be very friendly. So when you see Nilkantha Bagchi drinking in a shanty-like place, like some kind of country liquor, and talking to people who are really, really, like disenfranchised, Ghatak actually used to mix with people in Khalashitola. That's the area where people go for araks, right? So these are the things that Ghatak actually showed, how he lived. That might not be very acceptable in the middle class circuit. Like, Ghatak also comes from an upper class kind of a family background. But Ghatak, I think, through personal life, I think debunked quite a lot of it. And then, which is why, Ghatak could actually go and live with, the tribal families, or like really landless peasants, like landless laborers, and then lived as one of them, and they looked after him. And around that time, Ghatak didn't go on behalf of party, but Ghatak went there, as Ghatak. And you do see those moments, like when that Ganesh Mukherjee character, the Chow dancer, where they lived. So that is one of the tributes I think Ghatak pays. But they don't agree often. You will see that it's like there are moments of disagreements all the time. And also that Nochiketa character saying, I mean, this is nuisance. Do you even understand what are you saying? What are you doing? And it's basically looking after him, but also acting as an adult, where the Ghatak character isn't. And Ghatak laid that bare in front of you, his vulnerability. So I think Ghatak did identify some of the issues of an existence that he had,
Does anyone have any idea or suggestions to contribute?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay. I'm Cherian. I know some of the students of Ghatak when he was vice president in the Film Institute. In fact, from Adu to John Abraham to all. And they also used to share that he used to go to the, the country liquor dens of Pune when he was there.
Yeah.
That was part of his lifestyle. In fact, John Abraham imbibed that trait from him from those days.
Might be quite possible.
Yeah. So he is. But my question is, this film is totally different, as Nikhila pointed out. Totally different from his other films. And one of the reason, don't you think it was because of the way Naxalite movement was crushed in Bengal, and the atrocities on the young people during Siddhartha Shankar Ray regime. I think it should have been very frustrating for a person like Ritwik, because he started off as a party man. He had issues with the party, but he dreamt of a leftist, revolution of 60s and 70s. And finally, when it was supposed to happen, everything was crushed brutally.
Yeah.
So, don't you think that made him, take this new format, which, as Nikhila pointed out, the totally rejecting that, his usual format of melodrama and getting into this thing of an analytical mode, knowing fully well that his health was deteriorating, and as Manala's autobiographical writings say, that everybody knew that he was in the last stages of his life. So, is it not a kind of a person very, as you rightly said, the very politically aligned persons, a lot of these frustrations of 70s have come into this film and gave this format, which is, as you said, a Brechtian and as well as analytical. And of course, his usual style, he can't get out of his usual style of putting the classic characters, Purana characters into this film. Don't you think that political aspect is very clear in this film?
Thank you so much for asking this question. I mean, I personally heard a lot of stories from Adur Gopalakrishnan, then Kumar Shahani. I interviewed all these people. Also, Venkit sir. I have spoken to Venkit sir, and then I mean, indirectly heard some of Abraham's recollections of Ghatak, and obviously, I mean, his influence on John Abraham is quite like apparent, although they made slightly different kind of film, but very politically vibrant, right? And you are right. I think the kind of approach Ghatak took to the Naxal movement And also, I mean, I think there has been a few things going on which made Ghatak, I mean, there is a sense of immediacy in this film, which I felt. But we can't forget the year before Jukti Takko Gappo, he made Titash. Okay. That was also the time, 72. So 1971, Bangladesh Mukti Juddha was happening, right? Around and immediately after that, as soon as Bangladesh became Bangladesh, he went there and then he made Titash, right? And Titash has his epic melodrama style. Okay, so and around that time, president's rule was being proposed in Bengal, custodial killing, disappearance of people, tremendous crackdown. I mean, how many? I mean, an entire generation was actually wiped out. School, colleges, universities, even high school, like school students from class 8 onwards used to take part in Naxal movement in Bengal, and it was really like a real bad situation, right? Very oppressive situation. So, and obviously a person like Ghatak had to do something about it, can't just keep quiet, right? And also I think he engaged with the Naxal movement, because see, Indian left was very divided about Naxal movement, and I think Ghatak created a format in which different aspect of various arguments around political activism is is open for discussion. And it is, you might say that it is kind of ideal situation where people from different ideological position coming together, having a discussion to talk about different things, to thrash it out. So that way I feel that yes, Naxal movement obviously one of the things. And there was this a similar shootout situation in Jadugora. Many people don't know about it. So similar situation happened, which was, Jadugora is a place in Manbhum, then Manbhum, I think Manbhum district, now it must be in Jharkhand. So shootout of this sort did happen, and there are many people who think that Ghatak actually documented that in that film in Ayodhya hill region. And yes, I think Ghatak needed, I mean, the kind of argument he wanted to place involving Bangladesh Liberation War, Naxal movement, refugee crisis, and obviously his personal front, and also the crisis of some kind of folk creative practices. These are endangered kind of creative practices. So Ghatak also brought those things in place. And I think to bring all these things together, he needed some kind of a structure which is not neat narrative. He needed a fractured, more like an episodic stream of consciousness. I mean, if anything exists in cinema that can be called stream of consciousness, I would think that it is this, So I don't know, Cherian sir, if I answered your question.
Dajan sir, do you have any idea or anything to say regarding this?
Just one addendum to Cherian sir's response. I mean, just this is kind of aside. In Amarian, there is a sequence in which there is a drama enactment is being shown. They are I mean, a group of actors are practicing, it reminded me so much of Komal Gandhar, because in Komal Gandhar, you will also see a similar rehearsal, of the IPTA thing. So I think that was maybe, John Abraham's tribute to Ghatak.
Yeah, totally. He was totally fascinated. In fact, in
Yeah.
some of the university workshops, he will
Yeah.
narrate the stories and start crying. So, so that
Yeah.
is so
I
that
mean,
is
I
one
felt,
beyond for you.
and especially those, there was this main character who is jumping on the bench and
Yes.
then dancing and like emulating, right? And you
Yes.
will see in one of the sequences when already, in Komal Gandhar, when the group has already fallen off, the group, and they started their own theater group, and that Chitra Sen character, that young girl character, is singing, and there is also a similar kind of sequence. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is just so amazing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think I hope you got the copy of Cinema and Die, which Ghatak Foundation bought out soon after his death. I have a PDF copy, so a lot
Yeah.
of interviews, a lot of his writings
Yeah.
are it's a collection of works. So
Some of
I
them,
think,
yeah. I mean, they Ritwik Memorial Trust translated a few of his writing on cinema and some interviews. But there is this book. It came out. I don't know whether, yeah. So this book has 18 interviews of Ghatak. I'm like, and also there are 21 people who wrote about Ghatak. So this book came out, I think it's in Bangla, but I think this book needs to be translated. This book came out in 2000. Okay, so I think this book needs to be translated. So yeah, I think, yeah, I started translating it, but with my university work and other stuff, I'm being very slow. But yeah, I guess one needs to start. I think a group of people will be required to do this, quickly.
I know.
Yeah. But I think if you could kindly share this with the group, so younger people who haven't read Cinema and I, they could do it. I have the book in hard copy. So, but
Okay, I have the PDF I can share. No issues.
okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone have any question? David, sir, do you have anything to say?
In a certain way, this film has the same kind of beginning as the end. Then we see this old man watching, and then these three people dancing, and again the same kind of scene comes back at the end of the film. So that I thought as a presentation of a cyclical view of life, which is also reflected in the poem of W.B. Yeats at Galway Races, because the poem says, and which has been quoted here, like, sing on, somewhere at some new moon, we will learn that sleeping is not death.
Yes, yeah.
So sleeping is just like momentarily we are inactive and we are quiet, and that doesn't mean that we are dead. So in a certain way, it is that it is saying that there is misery, of course, but it will be followed by prosperity, which also reminds me of the film which we saw, where in the Nagarik, and then where the father figure says that if you accept failure, then maybe you will end up succeeding. So if you accept rather than closing your eyes, just say that, okay, we have failed. Probably we will think of something new, something different, and maybe we'll succeed one day. So the idea of destruction and creation, both are juxtaposed here. And that can also get reflected in the personality of Nilkantha, because Nilkantha, again, Shiva. Shiva is, of course, the symbol of destruction by the dance of death, and Tandav Nritya, and then also symbol of creation. So both these ideas are combined in one figure. So that I found interesting.
I think that is a very good reading, Sanjay. I think that's a very good reading. I do think, I mean, like I said the other day, that Ghatak's films don't end with, despair or really. I mean, there is always some new beginning. So when Ghatak's character dies, and then they are taking the dead body out, we also see that this boy and girl, Nuchiketa and Bongobala, they are also going together, as if that is also going to be a new beginning kind of thing. And also any war ends in destruction, but life gets back. So that is there already. But I also think Ghatak uses mythology quite in a very politicized, weaponized way. Because if Nilkantha is Nilkantha, Lord Shiva is not supposed to die, right? But Nilkantha dies at the end. So it is the time which is so ludicrous, that probably normal rules do not apply. And you are right. I mean, circularity is a cycle is important for that, which is why we call life cycle. Like somebody who is born will die someday, and there will be another birth. Not the same person. I mean, I don't believe in life after death or anything. So, so what I mean is, there are continuities. For example, Ghatak's, the tradition of Ghatak's filmmaking, Ghatak's thoughts. Ghatak actually talks about it in this film. Says, when the son and wife is going to leave home, he says that, my son, he will continue the tradition of ideas. Who knows? Maybe he will be better than me someday. So it's like this continuity, I think, is rebirth. It's a, I mean, continuation might not necessarily be always through DNA. So it's like like intellectual work, legacy, or even inspiration. So, and also, like I feel my teachers are alive through me, and my students will keep me alive. It's like uh, as long as somebody is remembered, that person is alive. As I mean, actually, oblivion is death, not persons passing. So memory always keeps people alive. I would also like to draw your attention to another point. Ghatak actually quotes another leftist artist, that is Manik Bandyopadhyay. And he talks about a weaver, okay, Modon Tati. He talks about Tati means weaver in Bengali, okay. So what happened? It's a story. It's a story. I think called Shilpi, that is artist. So it's about the Jamdani weaver, or like the Tant, famous Bengal handloom, Tati. And then they were not allowed to weave during colonial time. And there was this Bhuban Mahajan, that is the moneylender, who would ask them to weave gamcha, the towels, the Bengal towels. He didn't do that. But the people in village, they took him as an artist, as a weaver artist, and also a leading figure. So what they did, I mean, nobody took advance from Bhuban Mahajan, and they didn't do, they didn't weave, but as a result, they were starving also. So one night, people heard the loom being active from Madan Tati's house. So people felt betrayed. People thought, oh my God, he took money from Bhuban Mahajan, took advance from him and then doing it. And the villagers came here, knocked on his door and said, and he came out and then said that how, and this is what Ghatak quotes. Ghatak says that you thought that I will take advance from Bhuban Mahajan and then betray you. Actually, without running my loom, I felt, as if gout has attacked me. Like, my body was paining because I wasn't working. That is why I was using the, empty loom. I will not betray you. It is such a comparable case of Ghatak. See, Ghatak wasn't able to make films because nobody would fund his work. And obviously, he was being backstabbed by his colleagues from the industry. Even his friends didn't stand by him properly, And obviously, his personal circumstances was there. It's not that everybody was responsible for his failure. His mental health situation, his erratic, kind of stuff, and also his, like reluctance, vehement reluctance to compromise. He was not able to make films, but even then, he didn't go back to somebody and make films that, for which he had to bend his ideology. So he didn't actually betray. So he is a character, and then he kept on making these small budget, small films that his, friends will help him make. And the making of Titash, making of Jukti Takko Aar Gappo, these are all similar stories. Then he was making a documentary on Ram Kinkor Bej, which he left incomplete. Then like who knows where Chau dance documentary is. Amar Lenin is available, of course. Ritwik Memorial Trust restored it. So I think there are all those things going on, and the cycle of misery is ongoing, isn't it? I mean, if today also you see some uncompromising artist, I mean, they will be under attack. I mean, I think this is the story every time. I mean, the system wants to, what should I say, co-opt the artists, because that gives legitimacy to their voices. And there are artists who cannot be co-opted, and Ghatak was one such. So circularity, yes, there is, part of narrative, but it was also, I feel, more than circularity. I think Ghatak wanted to highlight the ongoingness of it, the continuity of it. That is, it's never ending. It will be like this, but we have to move on. It also strangely reminds me of Riders to the Sea, James Singh's one-act play, Riders to the Sea, in which the character of Moria says, I mean, I'm loosely quoting because I haven't read the play in a while. So no man can be living forever, and we must be satisfied, something to this effect. So finally, when she accepts the the death of his her final son, so I think there is an ongoingness, and the people of Aran Island, that area in near Galway, in Ireland, the sea is so treacherous that it is only natural that people will be dead, and but fishing is their life. They can't stop doing it. So there is this, in this calamity, there is an ongoingness of life, but also ongoingness of tragedy. So in Ghatak's film also, such deaths, accidental deaths, and also the protests. Protests will be there. When there is oppression, there will be revolution. Revolution will always be there. There is this ongoingness of oppression, but also ongoingness of revolution. The final thing I told that Ghatak's films don't end with despair or hopelessness. So this revolutionary is actually, you remember, there is a revolutionary who is using an automatic rifle, yeah, and who dies, but the rifle is still on. Do you remember that?
Yeah, yes, there's something.
Yeah. So see, this is like, that when there is this state crackdown, there will be armed resistance, first of all. Another thing is that the character you see there, okay, the person who operates that rifle is actually a freedom fighter, a Bangladesh, liberation movement freedom fighter. So you see, it's really interesting. I think the production stories told me more about this film than anything else. And some of the instruments you see, these are actual instruments that was used in Bangladesh Liberation War. It's really very fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for this wonderful explanation. Just a small point about the subtitles. I found that sometimes they were not accurate, and
I know,
particularly for Picasso's painting saying French war in the subtitle, whereas in the dialogue it says Spanish. So that is
exactly.
And
so okay, so I am doing the subtitle. I'm halfway through. I'm not even halfway through. I'm until 58 minutes. My subtitles are usually very extensive, so I'm following the same tradition. So once I'm done, I will share. I have a very good copy of the film, so I will share the film and the subtitle. But please don't see to it that it is not being used for any commercial purposes, just for academic purposes or personal use. I think, if nobody is monetizing it, it should be fine. There shouldn't be any copyright issues. The copyright of this film is with Ritwik Memorial Trust. So Ritwik Ghatak is the copyright holder for, at the moment. Yes.
Does anyone have anything to contribute?
I think we can now call it a day. Everybody heard me enough on this.
Yeah. So then shall we wind up the section?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Dr. Sanghita Sen, for your insightful discussion on Ritwik Ghatak's Jukti Takko Aar Gappo tonight. Your expertise and passion for the Indian cinema have enriched our understanding of this significant film. We are grateful for your time and contribution to our Ritwik Ghatak Centenary Festival. Thank you also to everyone who joined for this discussion. Your participation and engagement have made this session truly special. So once again, thank you everyone from me and the whole TFO team. Thank you.
Thank you very much for everyone who came and then spoke to me. It was really illuminating. I absolutely enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And keep up the good work. See you on the other side soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sangeeta.
Thank you so much.
Night.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.